Translate this: I'll give your mom my job. Japanese billionaire mocked black waitress's daughter. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get started. The lavish Waitress lounge in San Francisco was buzzing with life that evening. Fine wine flowed, silver cutlery clinked against fine china, and soft jazz played in the background. It was the kind of place where the wealthiest of Silicon Valley came to mingle, to close multi-million-dollar deals, and to display their status. But in the corner of the room, away from the spotlight, stood a young black girl, barely 10 years old. Amara. She had been brought to the restaurant by her mother, Cassandra, who worked as a waitress there. Her mother had promised her a special treat if she behaved quietly during her shift. Amara sat near the service station, head buried in a book, her innocent face betraying nothing of the tension that simmered around her. At the far end of the room sat Richard Kessler, a Japanese billionaire CEO known for his ruthless business tactics. Kessler was tall, his appearance polished, exuding the aura of power that came with the vast wealth he had amassed. He was used to being the center of attention, his presence commanding the room as easily as his words commanded the boardrooms. But tonight, something else was about to capture his attention. As Cassandra approached his table, serving drinks with her usual grace, Kessler's eyes flicked toward Amara. Amara had glanced up for a moment, her gaze meeting his. She quickly looked back down at her book, not intimidated in the least. But Richard Kessler didn't take kindly to being ignored, especially by someone so beneath him in his eyes. "Hey, little one," Kessler called out, his voice sharp and mocking. "Can you even understand what I'm saying? Or do you need a translator?" The words were laced with a venomous arrogance, the kind that many of the guests around him had learned to accept and even admire. Amara's head snapped up, her large brown eyes meeting his, unflinching. The rest of the room, once buzzing with conversation, suddenly quieted, as though everyone knew something was about to happen. Richard Kessler leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "I'll make you a deal," he continued, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Translate this for me, and I'll give your mother my job. You think you're up for it?" The challenge hung in the air, thick with tension. Amara didn't flinch, didn't move. She simply stared back at him, unblinking. What he didn't know was that she wasn't just some kid who spent her days doing her homework and helping her mother at the restaurant. No, Amara was different. She had grown up in a world where silence was often her only weapon, where she had been ignored, underestimated, and dismissed. But she had learned, in her own quiet way, that sometimes the most powerful responses come when you refuse to be intimidated. She had learned the art of resilience, the art of speaking when it mattered. And so, without a hint of hesitation, Amara stood up slowly, her tiny frame silhouetted against the dimly lit room. She walked toward Kessler's table, her steps deliberate, her face calm. A few guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of what was happening. Amara's voice, when it came, was soft but clear. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kessler," she said, her words precise, measured, "but I don't need to translate. I can speak Japanese." The room went silent. Even the jazz band stopped playing, the notes hanging awkwardly in the air. Richard Kessler's smirk faltered for just a moment, his eyes widening in disbelief. The moment stretched, pulling every ounce of attention in the room toward this quiet, unassuming girl. Kessler blinked, trying to recover. His brain raced, the arrogance that had once defined him faltering in the face of her unexpected revelation. He had no idea who this girl was, or how she had just completely turned the tables. And as the silence lingered, it became clear to everyone in the room. This was no longer about the mockery he had just thrown at her. This was about a shift in power, a reversal that none of them had seen coming. Amara's words hung in the air, the quiet tension thickening as she stood there. A mere 10-year-old girl who had just taken down the mighty Richard Kessler, the billionaire CEO of one of the most powerful tech companies in the world, now standing there, speechless, staring at her with a mix of disbelief and admiration. He hadn't expected this. No one had. The room, once filled with the hum of conversation and the clink of glasses, was now silent. Richard, who had built his empire on sharp words, quick decisions, and unshakable confidence, suddenly found himself at a loss. His eyes scanned the room, as if searching for someone to rescue him from the embarrassment, but no one moved. Amara, on the other hand, stood her ground, her posture straight, her eyes unwavering as she met his gaze. She had done it. She had not only translated the words, but also made Richard Kessler realize something he had never expected. That power was not just about wealth, status, or dominance. Sometimes, power came in the quietest of voices. For a brief moment, the billionaire hesitated. His jaw tightened, and he cleared his throat, attempting to regain his composure. But the damage had been done. His smirk had vanished, replaced by a look of confusion and something deeper, humility. The guests around him, who had once snickered at Amara's expense, now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had witnessed the unthinkable. A child, a young black girl, had completely turned the tables on one of the wealthiest men in the room. And it wasn't with force, but with quiet confidence, and a knowledge that no one could ignore. Amara didn't speak again. She didn't need to. The room was still. It was as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for what would come next. Richard Kessler, still visibly shaken, finally spoke, though his voice lacked the usual authority. "Well, I didn't see that coming," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The guests exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. For a moment, they seemed unsure whether to applaud or remain silent. Then, slowly, the tension began to lift. People started talking again, but the dynamic had shifted. Richard's usual bravado was gone, replaced by an uncomfortable silence as he processed the turn of events. Amara, however, stood tall. She had earned her moment, and she was not going to let anyone take it from her. As she returned to her seat, Cassandra, her mother, approached her with a smile. She had been watching the entire interaction from the corner of the room, her heart swelling with pride. She had always known that Amara was special, but this moment, this victory, was more than she could have ever imagined. "Amara," Cassandra whispered. "That was incredible." Amara smiled back, a small, proud grin playing on her lips. She didn't need anyone to tell her that she had just proven something important. She had shown Richard Kessler, and everyone else in the room, that there was more to power than just wealth. It came from knowledge, from confidence, and from the strength to stand up when no one expected it. But as Amara sat back down, a new voice interrupted the moment. A man, a guest at the table nearby, stood up. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair, dressed in a suit that spoke of old money and decades of experience. "Mr. Kessler," the man began, his voice carrying across the room, "I think this young lady has just earned herself a much better opportunity than a mere job." All eyes turned toward him, and for the first time that night, Richard Kessler's smug demeanor cracked. The man continued, "I run a nonprofit organization focused on education and technology for underserved communities. What do you say we offer her a scholarship to one of the top tech universities? She could do wonders with the right resources." Richard, clearly caught off guard, could only nod. He had no words. It was the kind of opportunity he would have handed to someone of his own ilk, someone wealthy, someone who could bring something back to him. But now it wasn't about him. It was about this little girl, this quiet genius, who had just taught him, and everyone in the room, a lesson in humility. The guests murmured in approval, and the room, which had once been so eager to see Amara put in her place, now watched as she was offered something far greater than any of them could have predicted. Amara had turned the tables not just with her intelligence, but with her ability to command respect, to demand recognition, and to take what was rightfully hers. As the evening progressed, Richard Kessler remained mostly silent, a stark contrast to his usual dominating presence. His thoughts seemed miles away as the event carried on without him at the center of it. And for Amara, that moment would be the beginning of something much bigger, something that had started with a quiet translation and ended with a future full of possibilities. As the evening wore on, the energy in the room shifted. The usual glamour and sophistication of the Waitress lounge no longer seemed to matter as much. Richard Kessler, the billionaire CEO, sat quietly at his table, his mind still reeling from the earlier encounter with Amara. He had always prided himself on his control, his ability to command any room he entered, but tonight, that control had slipped through his fingers like sand. The moment had been humiliating, and despite his attempts to brush it off, he could still feel the sting of Amara's calm, unwavering response. As the dinner progressed, guests continued to talk, drink, and laugh, but Richard couldn't shake the image of Amara standing there, her quiet strength overpowering his arrogance. He had been the one to challenge her, to mock her, to test her, and she had come out victorious. What made it worse was that he hadn't just been bested by a child. He had been bested by someone he had thought was beneath him, someone he had underestimated purely based on their appearance and their station in life. Meanwhile, Amara was still seated at the back of the room, trying to return to her book as if nothing had happened. But the events of the evening had changed her too. She could feel the eyes of the guests occasionally glancing at her, some in awe, others in confusion. She knew what they were thinking. She wasn't just a little girl anymore. She was something different now. But what did it all mean? For a while, she had felt invisible. It was easier that way. People didn't expect anything from you if they didn't see you as a threat, if they didn't see you as someone who could challenge the status quo. But tonight had changed that. She had made her mark. She had shown Richard Kessler and everyone else in the room that you couldn't judge someone based on where they came from or what they looked like. The true measure of a person was in their knowledge, their confidence, and their ability to stand firm when faced with adversity. As Amara sat there, her thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice. It was Cassandra, her mother, who had quietly walked over to her, a proud smile on her face. "Amara, you did something incredible tonight," Cassandra said, sitting beside her daughter. "I'm so proud of you." Amara smiled up at her mother. She had always known that her mother believed in her, but hearing those words made everything feel real. "Thanks, Mom," Amara replied softly. "I didn't think I was doing anything special." But Cassandra shook her head, her eyes filled with admiration. "You were. You showed everyone something they didn't expect. You showed them what happens when you stand tall and speak up, even when they try to make you small." Amara's heart swelled with emotion. She had never thought of herself as someone who could make a difference, especially not someone like Richard Kessler. But now, she felt different. She felt like she had a place at the table, like her voice mattered. As the night came to a close, the guests began to filter out of the restaurant, their conversations fading into the background as Amara and Cassandra stayed behind, tidying up. But just as they were about to leave, a man approached them. He was one of the other guests, a middle-aged man with glasses, wearing a well-tailored suit. He was the one who had spoken earlier, suggesting that Amara be given a scholarship. "Excuse me," he said, his voice polite but firm. "I couldn't help but notice what happened earlier, and I just wanted to say that I'm deeply impressed by your daughter's intelligence and composure." Amara looked up at him, surprised by his words. "Thank you," she said, unsure of what to say next. "It's not every day that you see someone challenge a billionaire CEO like that," he continued, his gaze shifting to Richard, who was still seated at the back of the room, lost in thought. "I think she deserves more than just praise. I'd like to help her. My company has an internship program for young people with potential, and I think Amara would be a perfect fit." Cassandra's eyes widened in surprise. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. The man nodded. "Absolutely. I'm not sure what kind of future Richard Kessler will offer her, but I believe in giving people the chance to prove themselves, regardless of where they come from." He turned to Amara. "You've got something special? Young lady, I can see it. I'd like to offer you a chance to work with us, to help shape your future." Amara felt her heart race. This was more than she could have ever imagined. A scholarship, an internship with a company that saw her for what she truly was, not just the daughter of a waitress, but someone with the potential to change the world. She had done it. She had made the impossible possible. And with that, Amara's life had just taken a turn she had never expected. This was only the beginning. The weeks following that fateful night at the Waitress Lounge unfolded in ways Amara could never have imagined. What started as a moment of personal triumph had snowballed into an opportunity of a lifetime. After the man from the restaurant had approached her with an offer, things began to move quickly. His company, a well-established tech firm with ties to some of the most influential people in the industry, had extended an internship to her. The moment the offer was extended, Amara knew her life was about to change. It wasn't just about the scholarship or the internship. It was about the chance to prove that she could achieve something beyond the confines of the world she had been born into. As she walked through the doors of Monroe Tech for the first time, she was both excited and nervous. She had never imagined that she would one day work in such a prestigious environment, surrounded by brilliant minds and cutting-edge technology. Yet here she was, an intern at one of the top tech firms in the country, rubbing shoulders with individuals who were changing the world. Amara had always been a curious, driven young girl, but she was more than aware that her background and her appearance might not fit the typical image of someone in the tech world. She had always been dismissed, looked over, and told that she wasn't good enough. But now, walking into that building, she could feel the weight of everything she had overcome. She was no longer just the daughter of a waitress. She was Amara, a force to be reckoned with. Her first day was overwhelming. She was introduced to her team, a group of engineers, designers, and developers who were all older and far more experienced than her. They were kind, but she could see the skepticism in their eyes. She could feel the weight of the expectations they had for her. She was the outsider, the one who didn't belong. But instead of shrinking back, Amara leaned into the challenge. She asked questions. She listened. She worked harder than anyone else. In the first few weeks, she found herself staying late, learning everything she could, and pushing herself beyond her limits. Every moment was an opportunity to prove that she deserved to be there. It wasn't long before her hard work began to pay off. During one of the team meetings, Amara was asked to present a solution to a problem they had been struggling with for weeks. The team had been brainstorming for days, but no one had come up with a viable solution. The pressure was on, and Amara felt her heart racing. But when it was her turn, she stood tall and shared her idea. It was simple, but it was brilliant. The solution she presented was exactly what the team needed. The room fell silent as they processed her idea. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, the team members began to nod. They had found their answer, and it came from the most unlikely source. From that moment on, things began to change. Amara's teammates started to look at her differently. They began to respect her, to see her as a valuable asset to the team. Her ideas were no longer dismissed. They were considered with genuine interest. The disbelief that had once surrounded her had melted away, replaced by admiration. Even Richard Kessler, the man who had mocked her just weeks before, began to take notice. He hadn't forgotten what happened at the Waitress lounge. And as Amara's success grew, so did his curiosity. He started to watch her more closely, observing her work with a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. He had been wrong about her. In the weeks that followed, Kessler made an effort to get to know her better. He would stop by her workstation, offering her words of encouragement, asking her opinion on projects. It was awkward at first, but Amara knew what was happening. He was trying to make amends, trying to undo the damage he had caused by underestimating her. And as much as she wanted to be angry, to remind him of his past arrogance, she chose a different path. She focused on her work, knowing that action spoke louder than words. As the months passed, Amara continued to rise through the ranks at Monroe Tech. She was no longer just the intern. She was a key player, someone whose ideas were valued and respected. But despite her success, she never lost sight of where she had come from. She never forgot the woman who had raised her, the waitress, Cassandra, who had taught her the importance of hard work, resilience, and grace under pressure. It was Cassandra who had always believed in her, even when the world didn't. And it was Cassandra who, to this day, remained her greatest inspiration. One day, after a particularly successful pitch to the board, Amara found herself sitting in her office, reflecting on everything that had led her to this point. She had come so far, but there was still so much more to do. She knew that this was just the beginning. The path ahead would not always be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, and people who tried to tear her down. But Amara had learned one thing in the past few months. No matter how many times she was knocked down, she could always get back up. She was stronger now, and nothing, not even the prejudice or doubt of others, could stop her from reaching her dreams. Amara had settled into her new life at Monroe Tech, and every day felt like a new challenge, a new opportunity to prove herself. She had come a long way from that first day of uncertainty, and now, as she moved through the halls of the company, she could feel the respect she had earned from her peers. What had started as a small internship had blossomed into a career she never thought possible. But even with the success she had achieved, Amara knew she had a long way to go. She couldn't afford to get complacent. She had worked too hard to get to this point, and she wasn't about to let anything stop her. It was a late afternoon when she found herself in the company's boardroom for the first time. The walls were lined with sleek, modern glass, and the table in the center was polished to perfection. A group of executives sat around the table, their attention focused on the presentation she had prepared. Amara's palms were slightly sweaty, and her heart was racing, but she wasn't nervous. This was what she had worked for. As she spoke, her voice steady and confident, she could see the executives nodding in approval. Her presentation was flawless. She had done the research, crunched the numbers, and laid out a plan that could potentially take the company to new heights. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to waste it. When she finished, there was a brief moment of silence, and then the room erupted in applause. The CEO of Monroe Tech, Ethan Monroe, stood up first, clapping, his face a mixture of surprise and admiration. "That was outstanding, Amara," he said, his voice sincere. "You've shown us all that you're not just a brilliant intern, but someone who can lead this company into the future." The other executives quickly followed suit, praising her work and offering their congratulations. Amara's heart swelled with pride. She had done it. She had proven that she belonged here, that she wasn't just some girl who had been given a chance by chance. She had earned her place. As the meeting came to a close, Ethan Monroe approached her, his expression serious. "Amara, I've been thinking about what you've done for this company, and I want to offer you something. I want to give you the opportunity to lead a new project. You'll be in charge of a team, and I'm confident you'll make it a success." Amara's eyes widened. She had never expected anything like this. To be offered the chance to lead a project, to be given the responsibility of managing a team, it was everything she had dreamed of. "Thank you, Mr. Monroe," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I won't let you down." Ethan smiled. "I know you won't. You've already proven that." As she walked out of the boardroom, Amara felt like she was walking on air. She had achieved something that most people only dreamed of, and yet, it felt like just the beginning. She had made her mark, and now she was ready for more. But just as she was about to leave the building for the night, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her mother, Cassandra. "Amara, I've got something to tell you. It's important. Can you call me as soon as you can?" Amara felt a sudden flutter of anxiety. What could her mother possibly want to tell her? She quickly dialed her mother's number, her heart racing. When Cassandra picked up, her voice sounded strained. "Amara, I don't know how to say this, but I've been offered a job. It's a big opportunity, and I don't know if I should take it or not." Amara paused, trying to process what her mother was saying. "Mom, that's amazing. Why wouldn't you take it?" Cassandra sighed. It's far away. I would have to leave everything behind here. I don't want to be away from you, but it's a chance I can't pass up. I need to know what you think." Amara's mind raced. Her mother had always been the one to sacrifice for her, to put her needs ahead of her own. Now, for the first time, Amara had the chance to return the favor. "Mom, you've worked so hard for me to have a better life. This job, if it's what you want, then you should take it. I'll be fine. I want you to go for it. You deserve this." There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Cassandra spoke again, her voice thick with emotion. "Amara, you've grown up so much. I'm so proud of you." "I'm proud of you too, Mom," Amara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've always been my inspiration. This is your time." After they hung up, Amara sat in her car, feeling a mixture of emotions. She was happy for her mother, excited about the new opportunity that lay ahead for her, but there was a part of her that felt nervous. What would life be like without her mother close by? But Amara quickly pushed those thoughts aside. This was a new chapter for both of them, and just like she had done time and time again, Amara was ready to face it head on. The next day, Cassandra made her decision. She took the job, and Amara supported her every step of the way. It was bittersweet, but it was the right choice. As she watched her mother prepare to leave, Amara knew one thing for certain. No matter where life took them, they would always have each other's backs. And with that, Amara returned to work, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that she was more than capable of handling them. The weeks that followed Cassandra's decision were filled with both excitement and uncertainty. Amara watched as her mother prepared for the new job, packing up her things and making plans to leave. The house they had shared for so long felt emptier with every passing day, but Amara knew this was a turning point for both of them. They had both worked hard to get to where they were, and now they had the chance to follow their dreams, even if that meant being apart for a while. Amara kept herself busy, throwing herself even more into her work at Monroe Tech. She had become a key member of her team, respected for her contributions and intelligence. The project she had been leading was nearing completion, and she was proud of the progress they had made. But no matter how much success she found at work, the absence of her mother was still felt deeply. It wasn't just the house that felt empty. It was a part of her heart that felt like it was missing. On the day Cassandra left, Amara stood in the doorway, watching as her mother loaded her suitcase into the car. Cassandra turned to her, her face filled with both pride and sadness. "You've come so far, Amara," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I know you're going to do great things." Amara's heart ached as she hugged her mother tightly. "I'll miss you, Mom," she whispered. "But I'm so proud of you. You deserve this." Cassandra smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "You've always been the one to make me proud, Amara. You've been the strength in this family. Now it's my turn to follow my own path." With that, they said their goodbyes, and Cassandra drove off, leaving Amara standing alone on the doorstep. It was the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. As the days passed, Amara threw herself into her work with renewed determination. She missed her mother more than she could put into words, but she also knew that she couldn't waste the opportunity she had earned. The new project was a huge success, and Amara's reputation within the company grew even more. She was becoming someone who wasn't just part of the team, but someone who could lead it. As the months went on, Amara found herself stepping into a leadership role with confidence. She had earned the respect of her colleagues, and she began to take on more responsibility. Her team looked to her for guidance, and she provided it, always leading with the same quiet strength that had gotten her to this point. One day, Ethan Monroe, the CEO of the company, called her into his office. He had been watching her progress closely and was impressed by her work. "Amara," he said, his tone serious but warm, "I want to offer you something." Amara's heart skipped a beat. She had already achieved so much, but she had never expected anything more. "What's that, Mr. Monroe?" she asked. He smiled slightly. "I'd like you to lead a new division within the company. You've proven yourself time and time again, and I believe you have what it takes to take us to the next level." Amara's mind raced. This was the opportunity she had always dreamed of, to lead her own division, to make decisions that would shape the future of the company. But there was something else in her heart too, the desire to give back to the community, to help others who had been overlooked just like she had. "Thank you, Mr. Monroe," she said, her voice steady but filled with excitement. "I won't let you down." As Amara walked out of his office, a surge of pride filled her chest. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and now, she was finally being recognized for her abilities. But it wasn't just about the recognition. It was about proving to herself, and to everyone else, that she had the power to shape her own future. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, planning sessions, and new projects. Amara dove into her new role with all the energy and focus she had. She knew that this was her moment to make a difference, not only within the company, but also in the world outside it. She began developing initiatives to help underserved communities gain access to education and technology, working with local schools and organizations to provide mentorship and resources. Amara wasn't just focused on her own success anymore. She was focused on lifting others up. As she looked back on everything she had accomplished, she realized that she had come a long way from the shy, overlooked girl who had once been dismissed by Richard Kessler. She had found her voice, her strength, and her purpose. And no matter where life took her next, Amara knew one thing for sure. She was ready. Ready to lead, ready to inspire, and ready to make a difference in the world. Months passed, and with each new milestone Amara reached, she felt more and more at home in her role at Monroe Tech. Her team thrived under her leadership, the projects they worked on became more ambitious, and the impact they had on the community grew. Amara was no longer just the girl who had stepped into a world full of doubts and challenges. She had transformed into a driving force of change, both within her company and in the world beyond it. But as her career soared, Amara never lost sight of what mattered most to her, the people she had come from. She remembered the late nights her mother had spent working 2 jobs to support her, the sacrifices Cassandra had made to ensure her daughter had a better life. And now, As Amara stood at the helm of a division that was shaping the future of technology, she felt a deep need to give back, to honor her mother's hard work and to lift others up, just as she had been lifted. One evening, after a particularly successful meeting with the board, Amara sat in her office, reflecting on how far she had come. The office that had once felt like an intimidating space now felt like her own. She had earned it. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a text message from Cassandra. "I'm so proud of you, Amara. You've made it farther than I could have ever imagined. Don't forget where you came from." Amara smiled as she read the message. She had never forgotten. Not for a single day. It wasn't just about the success she had achieved at Monroe Tech or the projects she had completed. It was about the journey, the people who had been with her from the start, and the strength that had kept her going. That evening, Amara made a decision. She wanted to take things a step further. She wanted to build a legacy, not just for herself, but for others like her, people who had been overlooked, underestimated, and left behind. Amara reached out to the community, using her influence and resources to establish a scholarship program aimed at helping young people from underserved backgrounds break into the tech industry. She wanted to provide the same opportunities that had been given to her, to help others achieve what they thought was impossible. The scholarship program was a huge success, and it didn't take long for the ripple effect to spread. Young, talented individuals who had once been told they didn't belong in tech began to find their way into the industry. Amara's program became a beacon of hope, a symbol of what could be achieved when someone believed in you, when someone gave you a chance. One day, while meeting with the scholarship recipients, Amara was approached by one of the young women who had benefited from the program. She was a college student, smart, driven, and full of potential. "Ms. Amara," she said shyly, "I just wanted to thank you. Because of you, I've been able to get an internship at a major tech company, and I never thought that would be possible." Amara's heart swelled with pride. "You're the one who did the hard work," she replied. "I just provided the opportunity. You earned it." The young woman smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. "But it was because of you that I even believed I could do it. You showed me that people like me can make it, and that makes all the difference." In that moment, Amara realized that the impact she had made was far greater than she could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about breaking barriers for herself. It was about creating a path for others to follow. The scholarship program had become something bigger than just a way to give back. It had become a movement. Amara's legacy was no longer just about the success she had achieved, but about the lives she had touched and the doors she had opened for others. As the years went by, Amara continued to lead at Monroe Tech, but she never stopped pushing for change. She never stopped fighting for those who had been told they didn't belong, for those who were told their dreams were too big. She was determined to make the world a place where everyone had a chance to succeed, no matter where they came from. And through it all, her mother, Cassandra, remained her greatest inspiration. It was her mother's sacrifices that had allowed Amara to pursue her dreams, and it was her mother's strength that had shaped the woman Amara had become. As Amara looked toward the future, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she was ready. She had faced her fears, shattered expectations, and built a legacy that would continue to inspire for generations to come. And in the end, that was what mattered most. Not the accolades or the recognition, but the impact she had made on the world around her. The journey was far from over, but Amara knew that the path she had set out on was one she would walk with confidence, knowing that her mother's legacy and her own would live on, carried forward by the people she had helped along the way. Amara stood in front of her new office, looking out over the sprawling city below. The glass walls of the building reflected the light from the setting sun, casting a warm glow on her face. The view was breathtaking, and yet, it was not the view that made her proud. It was the journey she had taken to get here. Every struggle, every challenge, and every victory had led her to this point. She had become a leader in her company, a beacon of inspiration to those who had been overlooked, just as she once had been. But despite her success, there was still something inside her that felt unsettled. She had achieved so much, but she knew the work wasn't done. There were still countless people out there, just like she had been, who were told they didn't belong. Amara had made a promise to herself years ago that she would never stop fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. It was that promise that led her to the decision she made one fateful day. The company had offered her a position at the highest level, to lead an even larger division, to make decisions that would shape the future of the tech industry. On paper, it was the perfect opportunity. But Amara wasn't sure. As she sat at her desk, her mind wandered to the faces of those who had been with her from the beginning, the young students who had received scholarships through her program, the team members who had trusted her leadership, and, most importantly, her mother, Cassandra. It was her mother's sacrifice that had given Amara the chance to pursue her dreams, and it was her mother's unwavering belief in her that had shaped the woman she had become. But what was it all for? What was success if it didn't make the world a better place for others? Amara had never wanted to climb the corporate ladder just for the sake of personal gain. She wanted to change lives. She wanted to give others the same opportunities that had been given to her. So, with that thought in mind, Amara made a bold decision. She would take the offer, but not just to expand the company. She would take it to transform the industry from within. She would use her position to create a ripple effect, not just by influencing the company's profits, but by using the company's power to make a difference in the world. She started by announcing a new initiative. Every new hire would come from underrepresented backgrounds, and the company would partner with schools to offer mentorship and training to students in underserved communities. It was a groundbreaking move, and it was met with some resistance from the older executives, who were more focused on profit margins than on social responsibility. But Amara stood firm. She had been the one to prove that people from backgrounds like hers could succeed, and she wasn't about to let anyone stand in her way. Slowly, the tide began to turn. More and more employees saw the value in the program, and more young people began to take advantage of the opportunities she had fought for. It wasn't long before other companies started to take notice, and the tech industry began to shift. Amara's influence had spread beyond her own company. As the years passed, Amara became a leading voice in advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the tech world. Her company became known not just for its cutting-edge products, but for its commitment to social change. Amara's leadership was recognized by people all over the world, and she was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and global summits. But despite all the accolades and recognition, it was the lives she had touched that meant the most to her. Amara knew that the real measure of her success was not in the awards she received, but in the people she had helped. One day, as she was wrapping up a meeting, Amara received a call from Cassandra. It had been a long time since they had spoken, but hearing her mother's voice always brought a sense of calm. "Amara," her mother said, her voice soft but filled with pride, "I've been watching everything you've done, and I'm so proud of you. You've become everything I always knew you could be." Amara's heart swelled. "Thank you, Mom," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." They talked for a while longer, and Amara realized that, no matter how far she had come, her mother's love and support were what had truly gotten her to this point. She would never forget the sacrifices her mother had made for her, and she would continue to honor that legacy in everything she did. As she hung up the phone, Amara looked out at the city again. She had made it. But more than that, she had changed the world around her. She had given people the chance to succeed, just as she had been given. And in doing so, she had created a legacy that would live on far beyond her own accomplishments. The work was far from over, but Amara knew she was on the right path. And as long as there were people who needed her, she would continue to fight for them, just as she had always fought for herself. Amara sat quietly in her office, looking out at the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the buildings as the hustle and bustle of the day began to slow. It was moments like these that made her reflect on how far she had come, how much had changed since the early days when she was just a girl with a dream. She had been through so much, and now, as a leader at one of the most influential tech companies in the world, she could hardly recognize the girl she had once been. It hadn't been an easy journey. There had been times when she doubted herself, times when others doubted her. But she had persevered. She had learned that success was not just about talent or intelligence, but about resilience, the ability to stand up when life knocked you down and to keep moving forward when the road seemed impossible. Over the years, Amara had built more than just a career. She had built a legacy. Her scholarship program had helped hundreds of young people from underserved backgrounds find their place in the tech world. Her work had inspired a new generation of innovators, thinkers, and leaders. She had proven that no matter where you came from, you could make an impact. And it wasn't just about the program she had created or the recognition she had received. It was about the lives she had touched, the voices she had helped amplify. Her success was not just her own. It was shared by everyone who had supported her and by every person whose life had been changed by her efforts. But now, Amara was facing a new challenge. The company had reached a crossroads. With her leadership, Monroe Tech had expanded and thrived, but now there was pressure to continue growing at an exponential rate. The industry was shifting, and new competitors were emerging, some of them with radical new ideas that threatened to disrupt everything they had built. Amara knew that the next few decisions would determine the future of the company. The pressure was immense, and for the first time in years, she felt the weight of it all. She sat there for a long while, lost in thought. As much as she had achieved, as much as she had fought for change, there was still so much more to be done. The world was not perfect. There were still too many people who were overlooked, too many communities that were left behind. Amara couldn't stop now. She couldn't let the momentum fade. She had always said that her work wasn't just about business. It was about creating a world where everyone had a chance. And that meant pushing forward, even when it seemed impossible. Finally, Amara stood up and walked over to the large window, looking out at the city once more. She could see the world moving, evolving, and changing right in front of her eyes. And she knew that she was a part of that change. Her work wasn't finished, but that was what made it exciting. There were more opportunities to create, more lives to change, and more barriers to break. She wasn't just leading a company. She was leading a movement, one that would continue long after she was gone. Amara smiled to herself. She had made it this far, and there was no stopping her now. She turned away from the window, her mind already racing with ideas for the future. She had a team to lead, a company to guide, and a mission to fulfill. And she was ready for whatever came next. The future was hers to shape, and she wasn't going to waste a single moment of it.